I'm Mat Ellis, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy.
Welcome to A Productive Conversation. I'm Mike Vardy, and this time around, I'm joined by Mat Ellis. He's the founder of 60, a productivity tool aimed at helping people take back their time and improve how they manage their relationships. Now, Matt has an interesting perspective on how technology has evolved over the years and some of the unintended consequences it's had on our productivity and well-being. Well, in this episode, Matt and I will discuss his journey with 60, how the platform seeks to use AI and behavioral nudges to help people be more intentional with their time and attention. And you know that the intersection of productivity, really what productivity is the meshing, the relationship between intention and attention. We'll also talk about successes he's seen and how reframing our relationship with technology can benefit our lives. That's huge in today's day and age. It always is, but maybe more prevalent and relevant in today's world. I'm looking forward to our conversation. It's a great one. I hope you enjoy it. So here it is, my conversation with Mat Ellis on A Productive Conversation. Enjoy. Matt, thanks so much for taking the time to join me here today on the podcast.
Great to be here.
So we're going to get into 60 in a little while. There's something when we crossed paths that intrigued me about the concept of what 60 is. But first off, I want to talk about how you got to 60 in the first place. So what led you to the idea of, I want to, build this platform. This platform is something I need. What was the kind of the tipping point, the problem that you wanted to solve?
Well, I was present right at the start of the productivity revolution. It was a Wednesday, March 10th, 1992, and I got to go to the launch of Windows 3. And they sent us back with a huge pile of floppies, but with it came something called Word for Windows. And I was blown away. It was just a complete revolution. And I watched people during the 90s get more and more productive as things that used to take minutes or hours would take seconds. It changed everything. It really did. And in just less than a decade, we went from a place where desks didn't have computers on them to every white-collar worker in the Western world had a color, networked, connected to the internet, computer running Windows. So I was there then. And over the last 20 years, I've just seen productivity software go the other way. And if you think about productivity, it can mean do more with the same time or get your work done quicker. They're both valid definitions. And I've just seen us become a servant to our computers where all we're doing is emails and responding to messages. And you're just overwhelmed by the flow of communication as we all just start interrupting each other with whatever's on our mind right now with not much thought. And like if I walked up to you at your desk, I would see your body language. I would see if you're busy. I would see if you're already in a conversation or got your headphones on and down or something. And sometimes I just let it go. But with our electronic productivity tools, I bug you anyway. And so this, as a startup guy and a CEO, it's bothered me. It's bothered my organizations. I've seen people just get stressed out about it. And just ask yourself, what would it look like if you didn't have any email to do in a week? What would your week look like? Just without the email. You've still got the meetings, you've still got the WhatsApps and all that stuff, but no email. That's just a demonstration of just how much the computers have become a burden to us. And it's a very human thing. Instead of doing our work in less time, we all do more work. And now the new normal, like when the barriers to women were reduced in the workplace, all it did was double the price of a house because now you need two incomes to buy a house instead of one, right? It did many other things than that, but that was one of the major side effects. And so, I just felt like there's an opportunity for technology to serve the humans rather than the other way around.
And when we talk about some of this stuff, it's obviously behavioral changes that need to take place, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the trickiest thing. So can you give me an example of where software can help with this rather than, I wouldn't say, like, so let me give you an example. Email was designed to replace the letter, right? Like it was designed to really replace like long form, and it's become like, ultimately it became like, hello, how are you? Like it became almost like chat. Now we have chat. So now we have chat, like to your point, we have WhatsApp, we have Slack, we have email, we have all these other tools that involve communication within projects, but also outside of projects and internally and externally. So obviously there's one of you and there's however many other people on the other side of the equation. What's one thing that you think software, and maybe in particular 60, can do that kind of can start to alter the behavior more so than kind of propagate it or promote it, because that's what software is typically done, is said, hey, you can have access to all this stuff. And that isn't always a blessing.
I mean, a good example is an AI, a properly trained AI can police your inbox so that the messages you read are only ones from people you want to hear from, and can judge who's important, who's not, or what's urgent and what's not. And it's not perfect. It's not going to get you 100%, but it's going to, you imagine looking at this list of messages and they're all from people you know well, and you know what they're talking to you about, rather than being overwhelmed by all these people who are, like salespeople are very good at trying to get your attention. And they go, urgent, or, money now, time running out, right? All that goes away. And you can go dig through when you like, but otherwise it doesn't bug you. That's a simple way. There's many other ways, but that's one really old. Like my wife, she has a very busy life. She's not paid for it with three children, busy school schedule, 3 teenagers. She had 60,000 emails in her inbox. Jeez. She just basically gave up on it, right?
Yep.
Doesn't want to change her email address, but once an email, it's like, for me, it's the same with text messages. If you text me, if you're trying to schedule something with me, I've got to either put down what I'm doing and make a decision, or you get to the back of the line. And if you're not on the screen on my phone, when I get back to it, I've forgotten about you. It's like, I vaguely remember I got a text, but I can't remember who it's from, right? And so now, you can have a computer that will just make sure that only people you know are in the inbox. Now, who you know is a really fuzzy line.
Right.
And like, just for example, I've just met you recently, but we're connected through someone we've each known for years. When you write me, you should not be a stranger.
Right. Yeah.
Right? However, if I'm in a 1,000-person company and someone in finance writes me and they've never written anyone I've ever met or done anything before, they're a stranger. They need to go in the line with everyone else. And so there's this kind of degradation where now, because thanks to AI, computers can act a little bit more like a human, and they'll make human-like mistakes. So sometimes Mark Cuban will write you and there's no one in between. He goes on the back of the line.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So there's going to be some human-like errors, but I think humans are good at human-like errors. When it's a computer-like error, is when we freak out a little bit. And we could understand that, someone famous writes you and no one knew them and maybe they're at the back. You could even adjust for that over time. So I think that's one easy answer. We've got lots of other thoughts, but that's one. I mean, and it can show you ways to get your work done quickly. Like another thing is turning off email in the evenings.
Right.
But we've all got an out-of-office assistant that says, I'm on holiday, right? Now imagine a smart out-of-office assistant that only replies to the people you know and doesn't reply to your boss who texts you. Okay. Well, hang on. I've just built a daily out-of-office assistant. Yeah. So if the assistant looks at, for example, say you're one of those old school who go to the office, right? Imagine if it automatically turned on the OOO a half hour after you left the office and turned it off as you're heading towards the office. All right. Yeah. Now, a colleague writes you at 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, and they might write you 10 times. They'll get one message going, I will deal with this when I get back to my desk at whenever I next back to my desk. Now, if I'm on holiday, it might be in a week. And if it's not going to be for a week or 2 weeks, it might include a few colleagues who can help with this. All right. And then in the morning, you get a summary of everything that you've had whilst you've been away. Now you've got a hope of putting the phone down for the evening. Right. Now, what we're not doing is changing people's behavior. When we do that, it's an opportunity to change it, and it needs a mindset change.
Yeah.
And you might just spend the evening doing your side gig instead. I don't know. But that's a choice at least,
Well, and to your point, I mean, I know it says take back your time, but it's really, and this is where I think we get into the point where we're looking about quantitative versus qualitative, right? For example, quantitative is easy to measure. You're going to get right out of the gate when you go to 60's websites, here's what you save. Here's it's incremental, it's time, because that's objective. It's easy to understand.
Right.
But attention, to your point, nuance, but that's the qualitative stuff. So when someone takes on using, say, a tool that is designed to help them change their behavior, setting boundaries, this is a good example, right? Removing the decision from the equation because you don't trust the decision that you might necessarily make. What have you noticed, in terms of success stories along this line, where it's they have changed their behavior. They have, now all of a sudden, it's their attention isn't being diverted as easily because they've had this kind of framing that has allowed them to build up a resolve around, not answering emails after a certain time, or, only focusing on this kind of work. I'd love to hear some thoughts on that.
Yeah. Before I give an example of success, you touched on something, which is imagine a world where I think AI's got a long way to go before it's everywhere and in everything.
Yeah.
Right? We're at the intranet stage today. We've seen the technology; it's really cool. Now we've got a hammer; we're banging in nails wherever we can find them.
Yeah, it's
But we
very
haven't
much
took.
like email. It's very much like
Yeah,
how,
yeah,
and if we don't do
yeah.
it properly, then
Right,
it will be like
right,
people who like there are those people who email you when it
right,
should be a phone call or a
right.
text message or not at
Yeah.
all, right? So
All the
yes,
all the people who had trouble doing Zoom in the pandemic.
yeah. You're right.
Right,
Only this is at a much, I think, grander scale. What's interesting,
right,
really quickly, is that we have people that are afraid, like to the high heavens about this stuff, right? And then we have people that are going like literally putting all their chips into it, right? Which is again
right,
a classic example of our behavior. It's either this
right.
way or that way. There's no
Right.
middle, right?
And the real world is messy. You might
Yes.
have seen that commercial a few years ago for an insurance company where people use yellow and blue notes
Hmm.
to write wishes for the future and also things that happened to them in the past. And one was optimistic, one was pessimistic.
Yep.
Predictions, you know? And for the future, it was 3/4 yellow, positive, and 1/4 blue. But for the past, it was half 50-50.
Hmm.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
People can get pretty misty eyed about this. What I was about to say was what is real is if you're not doing something a computer definitely can't do, your job is at risk, your livelihood is at risk.
Hmm.
So we say to our kids, if you don't get a degree, you're going to be working on your feet. You're either going to be waitering or digging a hole or, and if you've got a degree, you can be sitting in a seat indoors. Well, now, if you're doing something a computer can do, you're going to be on your feet. And if you're doing something only a human can do. And so part of what we're focused on in the Take Back Your Time movement is this understanding that you've got to stop doing the stuff that computers can do and you've got to start doing the things that humans can do, whether it's creating art, writing new stuff that computers can't do. I know they can create content, but completely new ideas, dealing with other humans,
Hmm.
thinking off back keep. I mean, that's the important thing here. So when we talk about success, we're not just talking about more time. We're talking about a different posture where you're making the computers work for you. And it feels a bit abstract, but it's key that you feel like that you're entitled to it. If you don't feel like you should have the computers working for you, then you will not think about it that way. It's like a judo move.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost the same posture, but you're thinking about it differently.
Yeah.
But examples of success, right? I mean, people talk about the hidden gems in their networks where they didn't know that, for example, we show people how close you are and
Hmm.
how people are moving, all right? And they didn't know how many people they were losing touch with. And now they really lean into the staying in touch thing because it's hard to network because we're all busy.
Yep.
All right. So a few years ago, until about 8-10 years ago, I used to label all my email. So an email would come in, go this file, that file, and sometimes it get labeled a couple of times. And I had travel and personal, all this stuff. I was very fastidious on it, right? And then Apple upgraded it, and my plugin MailTags, a Canadian company,
Hmm.
they scrambled to get the working version. And for 2 months, I was without tags. It was horror. My whole workflow collapsed. And when the thing came out, I learned how to deal without tagging on my mail. Okay. So what we're seeing with our users, when they get this AI filtering their inbox, they start to stop worrying about reading all the email.
Mm.
Once you trust the bot and you're the one training it, then you don't feel like you've got to answer all the emails. And that realization, and we all know this, a to-do list should be called a to-don't list. The whole point of a to-do list is not to do everything on the to-do list. The whole point of a to-do list is to make sure you're getting the most important things done.
Yeah.
Because the to-do list is infinite.
Yeah.
The list will expand to the time available, right?
Yep.
You will never get to the bottom of your list. And that causes a lot of burnout. So if you understand that lots of things fix themselves because you did nothing, now you're dealing with the most important things. And to deal that with messaging is a real big thing. And when you condense it down to here are the messages from real people, here are messages from real things, everything else is noise, people begin to learn to do less email. And it's transformative for those people.
Well, and then it doesn't become rote either, right? You know what I mean?
Right,
Like you
right.
said, you can
Or
foster.
compulsive.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to have text expander snippets and things like that for boilerplate emails and so on and so forth. I think those things are smart because obviously they will save you time. And they will also, I get lots of, a good example would be podcast guest requests, right? Like we have a standard, yes, let's go forward, or no, we're not interested, right? But there's always a middle, right? There's always like this. So for someone who is looking to embrace this kind of stuff, I think how do you get someone to realize that maybe the future is for them prompt engineering and understanding how to talk to AI as opposed to shunning it all together. Because I think that's the crazy part to me is anyone who is not at least looking at it more deeply, is that's where the problem's going to lie. So, I mean, yes, there's always exceptions to the rule. You don't get a degree, you'll be working on your feet. I didn't get a degree. It worked out, right?
No,
so
we're just trying to scare our kids.
Yeah, of course. Well, and the thing is though, is that there's that's a different path. Most people take the other path because that's the path that is either well trod or well worn or just the prescriptive path, right? Like this is what you should do, right? And with AI, it seems like first off, we've been using AI in ways that most people probably don't realize and have been for a while. So fears are, I wouldn't say unfounded, but let's temper them a little bit. Secondly, the other problem, and I think this is the bigger one, is once people start to use it, like we were talking about earlier, all of a sudden they are using it in a way that you can tell, right? Like, they're writing a blog post and then they're not looking at or a report and they're not looking to see if it's actually their language they would be using, right? And things like that.
There's a great South Park episode on this.
Yeah.
Where there's a class of kids and 3 of them are writing these crazy long essays with complicated titles and the others are turning in a page.
Yeah.
And you see it. You're absolutely right. I mean, let's just touch on one thing you said though before we go further. The fear of AI, no one's articulating it correctly. And this is the fear. If a computer can be as smart as a human, what we've not done is made a computer as valuable as a human. We've made humans as valuable as a computer.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's where the panic is, all right? Because now we've got a really difficult situation where, humans are no longer special, okay? And that is why people are worried, okay? Now, if you go back to the thing of how do we get people to lean in, I was lucky enough to meet a CEO coach called Jerry Colonna. He'd be a great guest on your show, I think.
Okay.
He's known as the CEO Whisperer.
Okay.
He's famous for making a CNN anchor cry on television.
Wow. All right.
And he's very good at getting to the heart of things. But one thing he said to me, he said to me personally, he said to the group a few years ago was, everyone is perfectly rational. No one, you have to have a brain injury to be irrational. There's a guy on a bus who attacked another passenger thinking they were a demon going to eat the children on the bus. And what his wrong was his worldview. Right? What did he get by attacking the demon? He saved the children, right?
Right.
And so I looked at this and some of my kids spent much more time avoiding doing their homework than doing their homework. So what did they get by that? Okay. And now make it more positive. I watched, in 2000, I had to remediate 5 million, that's with an M, end-user made programs written in Access, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Access, and Word using macros. And we had to evaluate these for Y2K. I was at a bank. Okay? And that's 5 million programs written by non-programmers. When you looked at those people who brought up Excel and built those crazy complicated sheets, they were programmers by another name. They're building information flows. Yep. They would get answers, all right? And if we can show people, and no one thought of spreadsheet that way in the 80s, but in the 90s, it became normal.
Right. Well, websites are databases. That's really all they are.
Exactly. Twitter's a website. I mean, it's just like you're making it easier for them to do it. So if we explain to people what they can get done, even if it's like go through a list and make them all unique. So get rid of the duplicates, even though some of them might have different spelling names, different email addresses. That kind of thing, where you're using it for your workflow and it's helping you, then people will begin to understand. Like, there's a really cool thing you can take a. I'm trying to take an anonymous card. Let's take one of mine. This is a cool thing. These things are, hey kids at home, these are called business cards. Right?
Oh yeah,
Your
I remember those.
Used to have them. Okay, right. You can take a picture of this on your phone and tell ChatGPT to send it back to you in VCF format.
Yeah.
Add it to the thing. The weird thing is when it adds stuff to the VCF that's not on the card.
Yeah, well, and so it's all the nuance stuff, right? Yeah. Which I think, again, and this comes into the relationship factor that you touched on, and that you've touched on with a lot of what you're doing, the work that you're doing now, is that, to me, like I've always said, we can't manage time because time moves on whether we want it to or not, but we can manage our relationship with it, right? We can manage, and so when we think about relationship management, if you're going to look at it that way, that's harder to do because it's incredibly nuanced. Whereas, again, if people are thinking about time, well, there's only so many hours in the day. Again, they're thinking about it in simple mathematical terms, which, again, there's one significant factor in there, and it's the human that will run out of energy, that will face anxiety throughout the day, that will, that has different roles to fill, not just, the work, but the home stuff. So when it comes to the relationship piece, which is, I think, that's a big piece of what you've been focusing on. What has, when someone is trying to improve their relationships, can you come from that angle? Like, is that the angle you come at from? Which is
yeah.
like, hey,
yeah. So every month and every quarter, we send you a list of birthdays coming up. Birthdays are a great way of staying in touch with people.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal is to help you send a birthday greeting that's unique between you and the recipient. Okay. So you don't want the recipient getting the same thing from 50 people. You don't want to get the same thing as last year. All right. And some of the email, we write a short, funny email. If you want funny, casual, functional. Yep. And so here's some examples. Dear Frank, February 26th. He's one of our investors. Happy birthday. Do you know you share your birthday with Genghis Khan, George Washington, and Ellen? Have a good one. Mm-hmm. Or Nicole, another investor, August 28th. Dear Nicole, we couldn't find anyone famous or successful who shares a birthday with you, apart from the guy who invented Twister. Don't get out of shape about this. Now, a computer wrote these, right? Yep. Now, we don't send them. We put them in the drafts folder, and the human decides to edit them, add to them, not send them. Sometimes it hallucinates. My birthday, it said, do you know, Matt, on this day in 2005, Terry Schiavo won her battle to turn off her life support machine and died. Mm. And that's when you find there's a corner of the internet where there's a group of people who fervently and genuinely believe that she went straight to heaven and it was a happy day. Yeah. So, that's the human error.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
your assistant didn't know that your dad died on the Titanic, and you're saying have a good
that's
cruise or something,
the awkwardness factor, right? Where it's like because there's no emotional filter there. There's no,
we do have a filter, which is another AI. So we run that message through another AI, and we say remove anything controversial, right?
Yeah.
So, but the goal here is to try and get something that a human might write that you're happy to send.
Yes.
Okay. Now, these messages, when there's a really good one, you always get a reply.
Yeah.
And even from people you don't know very well, they're like, I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't know I shared my birthday with this, or such and such happened on that day.
Yeah.
And so there's a good example of how, and this is like remembering people's kids' names, dogs' names. I had a drink with a CEO the other day, and his wife was driving to Leavenworth, which I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Yep.
This is way up in the boonies. It's a Christmas town, and the weather was closing in. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we didn't know whether she got out before the snow came in or not. And down here in the States, the White Death were terrible with it. I know what they're in Canada. You're comfortable.
Well, not so much where I am. I'm in the same as where you snow. What? Hey, huh?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Well, anyway, so she had to go over Mountain Pass, and just remembering that, and bringing that up in the next email is a helpful thing. We all would love to remember everyone's kids' names.
Yep.
We would all love to follow up on that exam or operation. Now computers can help you do that. And this isn't fake. This allows you. So there's a guy called Dunbar. You've probably heard of him.
Yes.
It's called Dunbar numbers. There's 10. There's 5 closest, 10 people, 30 this, 150 that, 1,500 faces you remember. All right.
Yeah.
Now with the computer, you can nourish those circles and make them more meaningful. And like, if you think about what meaning is, I was at a CEO dinner last night. I ran into a guy who got me my last investor at the last round for my last company. I hadn't seen him since he introduced me to them, right?
Yep.
And then I had a drink with another CEO, and I might be introducing him to his next investor. Now, when you have that kind of relationships, and it can make your differences to your life. You meet your future partner, you get a new job, you move to a new city. And that's the really powerful thing about managing relationships is you make the connections that were already there, but you didn't know were there. And really key here, focusing on other people's problems, being aware of them, it builds gratitude, it builds bonds, it builds empathy. But more importantly, you can actually make a real difference to people's lives. Because now you go, that guy's looking for a tech guy, and I ran into Robin who's thinking about leaving. And then that guy gets to talk to Robin just at the moment that they might be able to possibly hire them. Mm-hmm. A week later would have been too late.
Yeah.
So being aware of each other's problems is actually one of the super skills that you can do. And computers can just make it easier for you to remember them.
And I think that the, when you think about it that way, again, at the end of it all, and you pointed this out, I've said this before, like you're never going to get it all done. Your to-do list will be never ending, like you said. Right. But relationships, like nourishing those, like at the end of it all, that's the thing that we remember. We're not going to remember, like, did we get our inbox to zero?
Yes.
Did
Yeah.
we, like, I certainly
Yeah.
don't want, Mike achieved inbox zero, 85% of the time on my gravestone. I don't think and first off, inbox zero isn't even what it used to, like, speaking
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
productivity origins, it's not even what it is now. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
intended to be the way
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So in this instance, again, when technology can get us out of our own way, that to me is huge. As long as you understand that it is getting you out of your own way for a good reason and not just to remove you. And that's and we can't throw when AI or even an assistant, let's just go they don't do it the way you would. Instead of approaching it from well, I wouldn't have done it this way, it's, oh, that's an interesting way. Like, it's, again, a mindset shift, right? To say,
Right.
and you still get to craft and cultivate, like, and nourish, like, that message that goes out, those conversations that, like, it's not like AI can replicate the FaceTime that you're going to get at that dinner. It can't. But what it can do is, again, it's the equivalent of using a tool in a garden to remove the weeds. Like, yes, you could handpick them all on your own, but hopefully, if you've got the right tool, like, I don't know, a garden weasel or something like that to do it for you, then that's going to make it easier, which means you can focus on what the garden's there for in the first place, which is to grow plants.
Yes, and I agree with everything you
Sure.
say. And there's some dynamic here we've got to recognize and make space for.
Mm-hmm.
There's two types of power. There's the power to do things, and there's the power over you.
Right.
And people are actually a lot more powerful than they think, but they feel they live in a world where lots of things have power over them. So a lot of work is defensive. It's to avoid the power crush. Okay. So they answer the mail because they don't know what's going to happen if they don't answer it. Right. Or they go through the list and they do everything because they think there's trouble if they don't do it. We kind of train our kids to do all the homework, and to do all the things, to do all the chores, right? But really, to get fulfillment and contentment and achievement, you have to decide to only do the things that really move the needle. All right. And, I think it's Dave, what's his last name? The guy who wrote Getting Things Done.
David Allen. Yep.
David Allen, right. Who apparently lives here in the Northwest somewhere now. He recognized this. He's like, how do the next three things you do connect to the end of your life?
Yeah.
And, this is something we should teach kids in school, but we don't. And in reality, is most people have a boss and live their lives with people telling them what to do all day long. So a mindset that allows you to focus on the really important things and to ask, what am I trying to achieve here, allows you to let your assistant write the email instead of getting in there and rewriting it for them. Right? And that is a life skill. That's nothing we can do with a computer.
Well, the other thing is, and you bring up take back your time, but space plays a role here too. You get space. And I think that can't be understated enough. Like, you're like, but space is where, like, you can have all the time in the world, but if you don't have space, then you're going to still feel that pressure, that anxiety, that all of those emotions that come to the fore. Right. But if you have time and space, it's like, discipline is the key to make sure you use it in the best way possible. And to your point, this actually is interesting because when we talk about David Allen's Getting Things Done, a lot of people spend most of their time polishing the runway. They're on the lower level. Like, they never get to those higher horizons. And again, I think it's indicative of the environment and the culture, as opposed to, obviously when you read that book, he talks about the different horizons and the next actions and so on and so forth. But you're right. They don't, there's no space for them to recognize, wait, am I really just checking off boxes just for the sake of it?
Right. But there are different reasons why you do that.
Of course.
Some is because you're told to get, your parents were perfectionists.
Yep.
You're told you're a bad person if you don't do all your chores, right? But sometimes it's procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm going to do all the details because that big scary thing over there.
Yep.
Like I was joking with, my son, he's having trouble sometimes. This particular type of homework assignment where he has a writer's block.
Yeah.
He knows he's going to get judged. It's a broad, open, free-thinking thing, and he has a hell of a time finishing it. And I'm like, you were about to do my taxes for me rather than your homework.
Yeah.
It's like you'd rather do almost anything than the homework, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of this is compulsive, right? And it's about mental and emotional well-being. Jerry had a great phrase for how to talk to ourselves, which makes things more productive. He said, your sister's had an accident and you're taking her daughter to see her. And she says it's going to be okay, but she's pretty beat up. You have to get on a plane. And this 6-year-old girl doesn't want to get on the plane. She's frightened of getting on the plane. And there's a line of people behind you about to get on the plane too, and you're holding up the line. How do you talk to that girl? You're not going to yell at her and smack her and grab her and say, get on the plane, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to go, oh, well, we don't get on the plane. You've got to get on the plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's watching.
Yep.
Right? That is how to calibrate that voice inside ourselves of loving, authentic firmness, rather than saying, I need to do my runs or I'm a terrible screw up, right?
Yeah.
And so much of this is psychology. And yet somehow if we can take the pressure off and create that space, as you say, suddenly it's a bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
When you feel in control, when you feel you've got options, you might choose the same option, but now it's your choice. Here in Washington, in this Northwest, you have to register your car, and it's private and it's rubbish because it's so cheap, and the private companies haven't got any money for staff or computers. So everyone has to spend 3 hours sitting in a room to register the car when you buy a car, say, from out of state, or you buy it, so there's some weird problem with it.
Right.
And in the UK, we'd get to do that too, but there's an option to pay $300 to expedite it.
Yep.
So we're spending 3 hours in the room to save $300, not because we're made to, and the attitude's completely different. Yeah. Right. So sometimes creating that space, creating that optionality really helps free up the mind to be more productive on ourselves than we're kind of sometimes raised in society to be.
Well, and one of the things I think that as tragic as COVID-19 and the pandemic was, is it showed us we could slow down and things are fine. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need to go. And I was talking to another guest about this not too long ago, but the idea of we were working at such a fever pitch, but we didn't realize how much we were doing, because it was like the old frog in the water, the boiling water, where it's like, the water was slowly turned up. And then COVID happened and they turned off the water and no one's cooking anything. But instead of doing it the same way this time, they're like, oh, we got to get that water back up to temperature faster. So they instead threw the water on really quickly, threw the frog in. And the frog's like, nope, I'm jumping out. And I think that's part of what we're seeing, the rebellious nature of, again, and this is where we go back to absolutes. It's either we're all back in the office or we're all remote. No, like, there is a middle way. Like, there's so much middleness. There is a way. When they say everything in moderation, they're not just talking about food, right? And I think the hard part about, like you said, the middle is that it's messy. It's not sexy. It's very hard to navigate. It's the space where nuance goes to live and breathe, and no one likes that necessarily. I heard Terry Crews say this, I think it was on the Rich Roll podcast, that we're losing our ability to deal with nuance. We're losing that.
They said that brevity is the art of wit and accuracy is the enemy of brevity.
Yeah.
And in a world of 160 characters, I read the other day, it was the first time I heard the phrase Generation Alpha. They're the ones that come after Generation Z,
I've heard that phrase. Yes.
And their most popular show on YouTube is one where the episodes are 60 seconds long.
Yep.
Now, when you've got 160 characters in 60 seconds, there's no room for nuance. There just isn't. There's no depth at all in it. And that's part of the problem. I think that we've become so successful at building these dopamine feeding machines that anything that doesn't feed the dopamine is kind of boring and difficult to focus on.
Yeah.
And I agree with your thing about the messy middle. Sometimes you hear these things, these great diets come out and they're brilliant and people swear by them and then they kind of get discredited. Mm-hmm. I'm convinced it's because I've got no medical evidence for this. I'm convinced it's because there are different genotypes of people. Mm-hmm. And the people who discover this, it put great for them, really good.
Yep.
And more and more people who are not that type come in until the dull average makes it look rubbish, right? Mm-hmm. And the same for introverts and extroverts. Yeah. Myself, I'm in an office, right? If I don't get out, I change and I'm worse, right?
Yep.
And when I have 3 or 4 face-to-face meetings a day, even via Zoom, I'm so much better, but in person, the best.
Yes.
And so, George Washington was very popular because he was constantly improving. Mm-hmm. He read this book. It was the How to Win Friends and Influence People at the time. Mm-hmm. And he understood that humans have strengths and weaknesses. And some of us need a framework.
Yep.
And I have a buddy who I pick up every day on my way into work and pull him into the office because otherwise he won't go to the office. He won't get any work done.
Right.
He asked me to do it. All right.
Yep.
Senior level guy, very successful. COVID has taken him completely out of shape. And now he would like some help getting back into shape. When he's in the office, zooms through the work, gets through stuff crazy. When he's not in the office, delay.
Yep.
Because what COVID showed was there are less consequences to putting it off.
Right.
And some people just keep putting stuff off. And when I come over to your desk, I'm like, where's the TPS report? You're like, oh, okay.
I was waiting for the
This
Office Space reference.
I went to the Daily Show a few years ago and I watched this show, and it was the first Daily Show after the Trayvon Martin murder.
Right.
And when you watched it on TV, you thought these people were making very witty comments about the whole thing, right? In the studio, they were angry. And at one point, they stopped the recording. This is the first time in 2 years we stopped the recording. This is a comedy show. You need to laugh at our jokes. I know it's a difficult topic. Now I'm going to do that joke again. You're going to laugh. And they went back and they did a different joke. And we laughed our asses off because we were expecting the first joke.
Right.
When you watch the show, you go, why is the audience suddenly laugh so much at that fairly ordinary joke?
A pattern break.
It broke the tension.
Yeah.
Right? But the presenters were mad. They were angry, right? And it's the same with theatre and film. So over Zoom, you miss that connection.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. The other thing is, by the way, the nuance also between early risers and night owls too. Like that doesn't get taken into account either. Yeah. Right. Yeah, like all.
And so now you've got like 3 hours in a day when you can have a meeting.
Yeah. And it's not when we often do it. Right. Like it's like, let's do it at 9 a.m. Like that's terrible for the early risers, and it's not good for the night owls.
And then there's the experience and the inexperience. Mentoring, recognizing talent, helping people who are in trouble, much harder when you're not in the office together, all right?
Yes, absolutely.
So there's a room for human connection.
Sure.
The problem is the introverts have shown us how they ace it all when they're left alone to get on with their stuff, all right?
It's Gen X.
Suddenly everyone wants to know how what an introvert does at home.
Well, and Gen X, right? Like we're the last key kid. You want us to work for you? You basically go home. Our parents weren't home. We would basically be by ourselves from end of school until our parents got home from work. Like that was just the way that we operated as Gen X, right? And so. It is fascinating that we are in this, and it's such a, there is so much dynamic elements going on right now that software can be a huge help, provided that you have to spend time with it. I think that's the other, is people just want to have the button and they press it and then, okay, it will know everything. And this is not the case. With 60, how long does it take? What's the average? And we'll get close to wrapping up here. But when someone starts to use 60, like how long does it take for it to really kind of get the vibe if someone is being diligent with it? Like give me a good use case there.
We call it 60 because we never asked you anything that takes more than 60 seconds.
Okay.
So 60 seconds to set up. 60 seconds to do a briefing for a meeting, 60 seconds to read your agenda for the day, 60 seconds to go through your birthdays and decide who to send a card to. And we even have a moment where, to unify context, you can play a game and it counts down from 60 seconds. Instead of giving you a list of thousands of people to unify, we sort it by how close you are to them. And here's, John, and I've got 2 cards. Is it the same guy? And after 60 seconds, stop. Now you can go again, but like 60 seconds, 60 seconds, 60 seconds. We're trying to have less of your time, not more.
Right.
It makes for interesting conversations with VCs when they go, what's your DAUs? We're like, we've designed this product to be the non-app. People are talking about app fatigue, right?
Yep.
Let's have another app on my phone. No. Let's use the apps you've got and make it less than that. But everything's 60 seconds. When you set up, because you've got several things to set up, it might take a few minutes. And there's some training to do now that goes away over time. And we have more and more users. More and more people put the Washington Post email in the reading folder. So you don't have to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But for now, we all have to train it ourselves. So, but people love it. And if it goes wrong, we get a lot of complaints, which is a good sign.
Well, Matt, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me today. Where can people learn more about you and learn more about 60?
So 60 has written a briefing about me, and you can read that at 60.co/Mat Ellis with 1 T, MATELLIS. And that was all written by a bot. So you can get one yourself at 60.app. So sign up for your briefings, your clearing box, and your AI-powered personal assistant for free at 60.app.
Matt, thanks so much for having a productive conversation with me today.
It's been very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks to Matt for taking the time to join me today. You can check out all of the show notes, relevant links, etc. at productivityist.com/podcast525. Of course, you can also do that wherever you're getting your podcasts, be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, which you can find a productive conversation on my YouTube channel now. That's one way to support the show, by the way, is to check out the podcast on YouTube or wherever you are getting your podcast. Subscribe to the show. That way you don't miss a single episode of what's to come, as well as can easily search through the archives. Next time, I'm joined once again by Patrick Roan, and you won't want to miss this episode of PM Talks, which is, of course, our monthly series here on A Productive Conversation. It's another great one. Another way you can support the show is to check out the sponsors that you heard during today's episode. Go to productivityist.com/podcast sponsors. Check them out, click on the links, and that way they know that we sent you. Thanks to Keith Elliott for producing the show. Thanks to Sarah Hayes McMinn for helping put the show together, including liaising with guests and so on and so forth. And thanks to Soundstripe for the access to the music and such that we use during our episodes. If you want to get 10% off a subscription, go to soundstripe.com and enter the promo code VARDY10. Check out what Soundstripe has to offer as well. That's it for this time around. I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.